We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph and Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 15a. On the previous summit, the Gemara quoted the Mishnah, which said that Erchen HaMetaltalin is evaluated by three people. And the Gemara asked, what does it mean exactly, Erchen HaMetaltalin? Rashi explained that usually the word Erchen refers to fixed values of people, which are donated to Hektish, but here it says Erchen HaMetaltalin. It seems to be referring to Kalim. And the Gemara answered from Rav Gidel Amarav that we're talking in the Mishnah about a situation where a person says, Eirech Kli Ze Olai. And the Gemara continues because Rav Gidel Amarav said, Ha'omer Eirech Kli Ze Olai. If somebody says the Eirech, the value of this Kli, I'm taking upon myself, so no sein damav. The halacha is that he has to give the value of that Kli to Hektish. And Rashi explains, Ha'omer Eirech Kli Ze Olai, no sein damav, Kimoshu Shava, whatever it's worth, that's what he has to give. As the Gemara will explain, and Rashi says, Diodeu, because the person knows, She'ein Lomar Loshen Eirech L'Kli, because the language of Eirech doesn't really fit for a Kli, it doesn't fit for a vessel. Vein ercho katzav, and therefore it's not a fixed value like a general erech. V'gamar v'yamar l'shem damim. So what he really must mean is damim. He means we evaluate whatever this kli is worth. It doesn't go by a fixed value like it goes by people. De'ein adam motzi devarav levatala, because a person doesn't say things for no reason, and therefore that's what we assume that means. We assume it means no sein damav. As the Gemara explains, my time, what's the reason? Adam yodea she'ein erech l'kli. A person knows there's no fixed value for a vessel. Each kli is worth a different amount. V'gamar v'yamar l'shem damim, and so therefore he's giving according to whatever this kli is worth. And so the Gemara says, Mishum hachi no sein dama. For that reason, he's going to give its value. But the Gemara says, one second, Hai Erchen HaMetaltalin, but if that's what it means in the Mishnah when it says Erchen HaMetaltalin, it shouldn't say Erchen HaMetaltalin, it should say Erchen Shel Metaltalin, mi boile. What the Mishnah should have said was Erchen Shel Metaltalin, the valuations of Metaltalin. As Rashi explains, Erchen HaMetaltalin, mashma sha'arochin Metaltalin, that sounds like the values are the things that are moving around. Again, it should be Erchen Shel Metaltalin. And the Gemara answers to that, Tani, well, that's what it should be taught in the Mishnah as follows, Erchen Shel Metaltalin. The proper words of the Mishnah should be Erchen Shel Metaltalin, not Erchen HaMetaltalin, according to this answer. And the Gemara continues with another answer. What does it mean in the Mishnah, Erchen HaMetaltalin? Rav Chisda Amar Avimai. Rav Chisda says that Avimai says, B'matvis metaltalin la'erchen. What we're talking in the Mishnah is a situation of matvis metaltalin la'erchen. And Rashi explains, B'matvis metaltalin la'ercho means to say as follows. She'omer erchi olai. Rashi has a slightly different girsa. It's not matvis metaltalin la'erchen. It's matvis metaltalin la'ercho. For his value, he's matvis metaltalin. And as Rashi explains, the case is the person says, I'm giving my erech, that's what I'm giving to Hektish, erchi olai, v'nischayev erech hakotzav l'fi shanav, and as we said, there's a fixed value according to whatever a person's age is, and that's what he's now chayev to give. V'haya lo metaltal, now the person has metaltal and he has movable objects. V'yamar, he says, harei elu l'erchi, I'm giving these movable objects that's what I'm donating for my erech, for my value. V'chol alein kedusha, and so then the kedusha, the sanctity is chal upon these metaltalin. Ubalifdos, and then he wants to redeem those metaltalin. So tzarach gimel lahotzian miad hektish. You're going to need to have three judges to evaluate it in order to take it away, in order to redeem it from hektish. That's how Rav Chisda understands the Mishnah again. B'matvis metaltalin le'erchen. And the Gemara continues, if that's true, hay erchen ha-metaltalin, but still it shouldn't be erchen ha-metaltalin. What it should be is metaltalin shel erchen. It should be you have erchen, you have the person giving his particular fixed value, and it's metaltalin shel erchen. It's metaltalin that became hektish because that's what's being used to give to hektish that particular value. Metaltalin shel erchen mi boile. It should have said metaltalin shel erchen. And the Gemara answers again, Tani metaltalin shel erchen. According to this answer, that's what should be the words of the Mishnah. It should say metaltalin shel erchen. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rabbi Avo Amar. Rabbi Avo says, Bi omer erchi olai. The case is as follows. The person says, I'm giving my erech, but kohen ligvos mimenu metaltalin. And if the kohen comes to collect from him movable objects, Beshlosha, then you're going to need three judges, Karkos, but if it's land, Ba'asara, so then you're going to need 10 people to make the valuation. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Avo says, Ba'omer erchi olai, the person says, my value is upon me, ve'eno poreya. The case over here is that the person doesn't pay. He owes that value, but he never pays it. And therefore, Uba kohen lamashkano, and therefore the kohen comes to take collateral, he comes to take a mashkan. Umatzalo metaltalin, so he finds these metaltalin. V'hachi kamar, and the Mishnah means as follows, ha'erchen, dahainu erech adam, if you have have that fixed value of a person that has to be given, ubol lita and metaltlin, and he's going to give metaltlin because that's what the Kohen is collecting, nigvin b'shlosha shamon, you have to have 3 evaluators to figure out how much that is worth. Again, that's the case according to Rabbi Avohu. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Acha mi Difti le Ravina. Rav Acha from Difti said to Ravina, Bishlama lafuke me hektish. I understand, let's say something is hektish, a metaltalin, for example, and you want to take it away from hektish, you want to redeem it from hektish, but inon shlosha. So then I understand that you're going to need to have 3 people to evaluate. Ela le'iyule lehektish. But according to this last answer of Rabbi Avo, the Kohen is collecting the metaltalin, he's bringing it into hektish. So shlosha lamali, what do you need 3 people for that for? And the Gemara answers, Amar le said back to him, Svaru, it's logical. Mali iyule, mali afuke. What's the difference if you're bringing it into hektish? What's the difference if you're taking it out of hektish? Afuke, my time. When you're taking it out of hektish, what's the reason you need 3 people to evaluate? Dil matoi, because maybe there'll be a mistake in the evaluation. You don't want to make a mistake when it comes to hektish. So iyule nami, when you're bringing it into hektish as well, you don't want to make a mistake. Dil matoi, maybe there's going to be a mistake, and that's why we need 3 people to evaluate. And Rashi explains, Bishlama lafuke me hektish. I understand if you're taking it out of hektish, could go into Rev Gidl, Rev Chista, for example, Rev Gidl and Rev Chista's answers, Hu deboy shlosha, you're going to need three individuals to evaluate. The kaven dechol olav hektish, because once it's hektish, lo nefa gat shifdenu b'shaviv. It's not going to leave hektish until you redeem it, and you have to figure out its value. You have to redeem it according to its value. Elele yule could go into Rabbi Avo, but to bring it into hektish, like the case of Rabbi Avo, and the Gemara ultimately answered, there also yule nami dilmato. When it comes to bringing it into hektish, maybe it will be a mistake. Maybe it will be taken from hektish at more than it's actually worth. That would be a problem, and that's why it needs to be evaluated properly. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer v'chulu. Rabbi Yehuda said that when you're evaluating this hektish, erchen hametaltalin, you need to have 3 people, but one of them needs to be a Kohen. And the Gemara says, Amar le Rapapa li Abaye. Rapapa said to Abaye, B'shlam Rabbi Yehuda. I understand according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hainu dichsiv Kohen. That's why it says in the pasuk Kohen, because one of them has to be a Kohen. Ela l'Rabbanan Kohen lamalu. But according to the Rabbanan, what does the pasuk need to say Kohen for? And the Gemara says Kasha. The Gemara leaves that as a difficulty. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said Hakarkos Tishav a Kohen. When it comes to evaluating land, you need 9 people in a Kohen. And the Gemara says Minohani Mili. From where do we know this? Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says Asara Kohanim Ksuvin b'Parsha. It says Kohen 10 times in the Parsha. So Chad Lagufe. So therefore, one of them is just needed for the evaluation itself. That you need to have a Kohen for that evaluation. And Hanach, and then the other ones have a miyot achar miyot. That's called a miyot achar miyot. It's an exclusion following another exclusion. Ve'ein miyot achar miyot ela l'rabos. When you have a miyot achar miyot, you're actually including the afilu tes Yisrael v'echad Kohen. That means to say that all the other 10, they don't actually need to be a Kohen. You can have 9 Yisraelim, and you can have 1 Kohen, and that is good enough. And the Gemara continues, Maskef la Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan. Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan asks on this, Eima chamisha Kohanim v'chamisha Yisraelim. According to that, we should really say that it's 5 Kohanim and 5 Yisraelim. We'll see Rashi in a moment. And the Gemara says Kasha. The Gemara leaves that as a difficulty. And Rashi explains Chad Lagufe. Again, the first time it says Kohen, that's Lagufe, the Niboy Kohen, that the evaluator needs to be a Kohen. And the other ones are Miyot Achar Miyot, they're exclusions following exclusions, to Kulum Mati Yisrael, because all of the times it says Kohen, it seems to be excluding Yisrael, but a Miyot Achar Miyot actually includes Demashma Kohen Velo Yisrael. It sounds like a Kohen and not Yisrael, but as we said, Ein Miyot Achar Miyot Ela L'Rabos, and so therefore we say 9 Yisraelim and 1 Kohen. But then the Gemara asks, Ve'ema chamisha Kohanim v'chamisha Yisrael. Why don't we say 5 Kohanim and 5 Yisraelim? But that's what we should require. The Kamol Lagufe, because according to the following, we'd say like this: the first one is Lagufe, you need a Kohen. That's the first time it says Kohen. V'sheni lo have mir achar mir. Now the second time, that's an exclusion after exclusion. Ushlishi hadar itzrich Lagufe, and then the third one, that's needed for itself to have a Kohen. That you need to have a Kohen. The kevon this Rabbi Lemi miot achar miot afilu Yisrael, because if you already included by the first miot achar miot, you included a Yisrael. Ki hadar kasav Kohen dafka kasve. So then when it says Kohen, it means to say only a Kohen. The lav miot achar miot, that's no longer a miot achar miot. To hasheni lav miot hu elu riboy, because that second one we said is not really an exclusion. It's actually an inclusion, because a miot achar miot is l'rabos. V'chein kulam, and so you'll do that every time. It's basically going to be every other one. Chad dafka v'chad having miot achar miot. One's going to be considered dafka, it has to be a Kohen. The other's a miot achar miot. So that was the question of the Gemara, that you should need 5 Kohanim and 5 Yisraelim, and the Gemara left that as a question. And And the Gemara continues with the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'adam kayotze behen," a person is similar to land. Rashi explains, "V'adam kayotze behen kikarkos." It means a person is like land. De boinami teisha v'kohen lashuman. That you're going to need 9 individuals plus a kohen in order to make the evaluation, just like by land. And the Gemara asks, "Adam mikadosh," but is a person really kadosh? Is there such a thing as a person becoming hektish? And the Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi Avo." Rabbi Avo says, "Ba'omer demei olai." The case of the Mishnah is a person says, "My value is upon me." That's what he's donating to the Beis Hamikdash. That's the case. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, "Ha'omer demei olai." If a person says, "My value is upon me," shamino so ke'eved hanimkar b'shuk. In that case, it's not like a case of erchin where you're giving a fixed value. Here, it depends on the person. You evaluate him as if he would be a slave that would be sold in the marketplace, and that's how you're trying to evaluate how much the person is giving to hektish. And the Gemara continues, "Ve'eved iskish lekarkos." An eved is compared, a slave is compared to karka, to land, and therefore we follow the same rules as land. We say you're going to need 9 people and a kohen. And Rashi says, "V'eved iskish lekarkos." How do we know that an eved is compared to karka? That's from the pasuk which says, "V'hisnachaltem osam," that you're going to bequeath them. They're going to be like an inheritance, and therefore that's a comparison of avodim and karka. And the Gemara continues, "Boy Rabbi Avin." Rabbi Avin asks the following question: "Sar ha'omed ligzos." Let's say you have hair, and that hair is ready to be sheared. It's ready to be cut off. Bekama. So how many are evaluating that? Meaning to say, is that considered like metaltalin, or is that considered like the person? Kegazuz dami uvishlosh. Is that considered like it's already been sheared, and therefore you're going to need like metaltalin 3 people to evaluate? O kemechuber dami, or maybe it's like it's still attached. Uviar sar, and you need 10 people. And Rashi explains, "Sar ha'omed ligzos vehikdisho." Person made that hair hektish. Ubolif doso b'shavyev, and the person wants to redeem it according to its value. Sha'osin misar adam nofa v'kilkli v'chavak, because you can make from the hair of people, you can make these various kinds of vessels. So kegazuz dami, is it considered like it's sheared? V'havalu metaltalin v'shlosha, then it would be considered metaltalin, it's with 3 people. Or again, do we say it's mechuber? It's considered mechuber and it's with 10 people. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come here, a proof from the following braysa, hamakdish asavdo, if a person sanctifies his eved, his slave, ein moalin bo, there is no me'ilah when it comes to an eved. That would be the me'ilah is the misuse of hektish. That those halachas do not apply when it comes to an eved. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, moalin besaro, there is me'ilah when it comes to the hair of the eved. The kaim alon, and we've established understanding this machlokas tanoim, we understand it as follows: the besaro ha'omed ligzos pligi, that they're actually arguing when it comes to hair which is ready to be cut. That's a machlokas. Is that considered still part of the eved, or is it not considered part of the eved? If Shimon ben Gamliel says it's like it's already been cut off, and therefore there is me'ilah. And the Gemara says, Shmamina, indeed you see from this that is a machlokas tanoim. And Rashi explains, Ein moalin bo, there is no me'ilah by the eved. The eved hareo kakarka, because an eved is the same as land, as we just said. Ve'ein me'ilah bekarka, there is no me'ilah when it comes to land. Of Meseches me'ilah gamar chet mitruma beperak hanenet. This is all learned out in Meseches me'ilah. And then Rav Shimon ben Gamliel said, moalin besaro, there is me'ilah when it comes to his hair. The saro lav kagufo, because his hair is not like his body. V'havalei kashar metaltalin, it's considered to be like metaltalin. And the Gemara said, ha'omid ligzos, the machlokas here is when you have omid ligzos, shekvar shilach perav aroil is dapper, it's already fit to be cut, he's fit to have a haircut, and that is the machlokas over here. And the Gemara said, shmami no, you see from here, pluksa de tanoyev, that it actually is a machlokas tanoyev. L'tanakama damar les bu me'ilah, according to the Tanakama, he's saying there's no me'ilah when it comes to the hair. He would argue with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, savar kamechuber dami, he would say it's considered like it's still attached. Ul inyan pediya nami boy asar, therefore you'd also need, when redeeming it, you'd need 10 people to evaluate, like by a person. Or Rav Shimon kegazos dami, and according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, it's considered like it's already cut. And the Gemara continues, Neima hani tanoi kahani tanoi. Let us say that this machlokas tanoim is the same as the following machlokas tanoim. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, this is in Mesechet Shavuos. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, Yesh devorim shein kakarka ve'einon kakarka. There are some things that are like land, but they're not really like land. Ve'ein chachamim modim lo, and the chachamim do not admit to Rabbi Meir. Keitzad, how so? What exactly do we mean? For example, the following case, Eser gefanim to unos masarti lach. Let's say a person says that I gave you 10 vines and they were laden with grapes. That's what I gave to you. That's what you owe me. Va'alom omer, and the other one says, Einon elachamish, you didn't give me 10. You only gave 5. So the question is whether or not this is considered like a case of modav and mixas. Rabbi Meir mechayev. Rabbi Meir says the person is chayev to take a shavu. It's considered to be a regular case of modav and mixas. It is not considered to be like land where there would be no shavua. V'chachamim omer, but the chachamim say, if it's attached to the ground, it's considered like ground, it's considered like land, and therefore it's not a case of modav and mixas with a shvua. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, and Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina says, what's really the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim? Ba'anovim ha'omdos libotzer askinon, we're talking about grapes which are ready to be harvested. Mar savar kibitzuros damyon, Rabbi Meir holds, it's like it's already harvested, it's a regular case of metaltalin, of modim and mixas. Umar savar, and the other one holds, the Chachamim hold, lav kibitzuros damyon, it's still attached to the ground, it's not considered like it's harvested, and therefore the Chachamim say that it's considered to be like land, and the Gemara wants to say that's the same thing when it comes to hair. And the Gemara says, lo, no, afilu temer Rabbi Meir, you could even say it's Rabbi Meir, meaning to say, even though Rabbi Meir says when it comes to grapes it's considered detached from the ground, it could be that hair is considered attached. Why? Because adkan lo kam Rabbi Meir hasam, Rabbi Meir only said over there by the grapes, because kol kama deshav kalahu, the longer you leave those grapes on, mikchash kachsh, they actually weaken, they actually deteriorate. Therefore it's considered like metaltal, and these are things that have to be harvested at this point in time. Avol saro, but when it comes to his hair, kol kama deshav kalahu, the longer you leave the hair growing, ashbuche mishbach, it's considered longer, it's considered to be an improvement, it's considered to be of more value, and therefore Rabbi Meir might say that in that situation it's still considered to be attached. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Dinei nefashos v'chula, when it comes to capital cases, they are judged with 23 judges. And the Mishnah went on to say that cases of bestiality as well are judged with 23 judges. And the Gemara says, Kapasik v'tani, it seems like the Mishnah is saying across the board, it's all the same. Loshna rovea zachar, v'loshna rovea nekeva. It doesn't matter if the animal penetrates a male, it doesn't matter if the animal penetrates a female. In both cases of bestiality, we're going to say that it's judged with 23 judges. And the Gemara says, Bishlama rovea nekeva. Now I understand in a case of rovea nekeva, that's the animals penetrating a person that is a female. So there it makes sense that we're going to say 23 judges. It's a situation of a capital case. Dechsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, v'harakto eso isha, v'asa behema, it says that we're going to kill the woman and we're going to kill the animal in such a situation. Ela rovea zachar, but in a case where it's a rovea zachar, the animal penetrates a male, a person that is a male, minolan. So from where do we know again that the same halachas apply? And the Gemara says dechsiv, because it's written in the pasuk, kol shochev im behema mos yumas. It says that anybody who lies with an animal will surely be put to death. Imeino inyan l'shochev. Now, if we don't need it for the person who's lying with the animal, tenei inyan l'nishkav, do the person that's being lied with in terms of the animal, meaning that the animal is penetrating the person. V'afke rachmana b'lashon shochev, and yet the pasuk is using the word shochev, even though we're talking about a nishkav. And why are we doing that? Says the Gemara, lakushe nishkav l'shochev. We're actually comparing the nishkav to the shochev. Mashochev hu uvehemto be'esrim l'shlosha. Just like by a shochev, he and the animal are judged with 23. Af nishkav, so too when it comes to nishkav, which is the case of rovei azachar that the Gemara started with, hu uvehemto be'esrim l'shlosha. He and the animal are going to be judged with 23 judges. And Rashi explains kapasik v'tani masnisin roveya stama b'chav gimel. It just says that by a case of roveya, 23 judges. Loshna shor sharava adam zachar, v'loshna shor sharava isha nekeva. It doesn't matter if the shor was roveya, penetrated a person that was male or a person that was female. It doesn't matter. The nafkal and tarvayu mikroy v'perakar misas shein b'skila. We understand in both cases that the punishment is skila. V'tana the masnisin marbil l'chav gimel, and the Tana Rav Mishnah is saying you need 23 judges. Bishlama roveya nekeva. Now I understand by roveya nekeva, if the nishkav, so to speak, would be a nekeva, ksiv beichav gimel, there's 23 judges, dechsiv as it's written, v'harakto esisha v'esa behema, it says you kill the woman, you kill the animal. Iskish behema lisha, and we compare the two. V'dinei nefashos nafkina l'kamon, be'esrim v'shlosha, and we know that capital cases are judged with 23. Ela roveya zachar menolan de beichav gimel, but by roveya zachar, how do we know that you need 23? Dechsiv kol shochev, because it says kol shochev, umehai nafkal and ba'arva misas l'roveya zachar. Now that is the case, we learn out the case of roveya zachar from there. Because it can't be talking about a person who comes upon the animal, who penetrates the animal. That's already a different pasuk. So therefore, Taneu inyan l'nishkav, it must be talking about a nishkav. Again, a nishkav who is a person that's a male. L'mevi behema, all of that, the behema is going upon him. When we da'afke b'lashon shochev, and since you're using a language of shochev when you're really talking about a nishkav, lidon keshochev, it shows that we judge it the same way as a shochev. Ma bo ala behema hu v'hi b'chav gimel, just like one who comes upon an animal, he and the animal are judged with 23. Like we learn out from the pasuk of V'esa behema ta'arogu, the iskish behema adam, that the animal is compared to a person. Af mevi behema olav, so to one who causes the animal to come upon him. Shneim b'chav gimel, both are going to be judged with 23 judges. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, shor haniskal, let's say you have a shor that has to be stoned because it killed a person, be'esrim u'shlosha, that is also judged with 23 judges. And the Gemara says, shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, ashor yisakel, v'gam ba'olav yumas, it says the shor is stoned and the owner will die, and that's made for a drasha, for a comparison. Kemisas habaylam kach misas hashor. Just like when you kill a person, it's 23 judges, so too when you kill an ox, when you have a shor haniskal, it's 23 judges. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Abai l'Rava, Abai said to Rava, Mimai dehai v'gam ba'olav yumas l'chamisas baylam kach misas hashor hu da'asa. How do we know that from the pasuk, that this pasuk of gam ba'olav yumas is to tell you this halacha, that kamisas habaylam kach misas hashor? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tesvav Amid Beis.